Hi, I'm Frank Ryan, a state representative for the 101st District in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania. And with me is my best friend, Jim Rodkey from the Pennsylvania Property Rights Association. And we're going to talk to you about some frequently asked questions that come up about House Bill 13. Jim, one of the questions that comes up on the bill is, will renters see any benefit from property tax elimination under our bill?
Under our bill specifically, there is language in this that is a protection to renters. And I think that's important because we are increasing a PIT, we are an income tax, we're at the local level, and we are increasing a sales tax. It's not just homeowners who are going to pay that, renters are going to pay that as well. And renters should be seeing that savings. After all, they've been seeing the increases to their rent because of the property taxes, so they should see the savings as well.
Yeah, one of the things that we found in our analysis about why people objected to other prior efforts was the comment that came about that said, you know, renters are going to be paying twice. It'll be the landlord will get a benefit of the property tax. But I became increasingly concerned as a free market kind of person, I know you are as well, that we didn't want to start dictating rent. So what we put in the bill is, if the landlord had been historically transferring the increased property taxes that they were getting to the tenant, they would then provide that saving to the tenant. And then when the lease comes up for renewal, then both parties could renegotiate it. It gives more time for that free market system to kick in, because this is a major shift in funding. But we also had an awful lot of landlords who didn't pass it on. They felt that the tenant couldn't do it. And they said, Frank, you know, that would hurt me. So what we did is we put a 5-year look back and said, if you only raised the property tax or the rent a little bit over that 5-year window, that's all you had to do was reduce it by that amount until the next renewal. And so we found a lot of people were supportive of that. Jim, one of the other comments that we get an awful lot of questions about is, I shouldn't have to pay a income tax on the money I already put into my retirement income. And I think we accommodated that concern. But tell me a little bit about what we did with that part of the bill.
Well, we have isolated, we have looked at the retirement income tax. I look at all of this stuff as, you know, we have to do this as fair as is humanly possible. And part of the humanly possible is limitations that are already in existence with current law. We are able, under Pennsylvania law, to essentially exempt all taxation for the portion of your retirement that you've already paid into. It's that other portion that we're looking at.
The earnings.
The earnings. I mean, we have looked at other ways to do this. I mean, you know, we talked about, you know, doing a cutoff, you know, to doing an exemption like we do with the PIT, but this is a whole different thing. And we're looking at you know, what we're being advised by the legal efforts that are up here, constitutionally, what we can and can't do.
So what it really means is anybody who's put money into a plan, it's not taxed on the way out. And you know, one of the things that came up in the open questioning period that we've been getting from people is, you know, I'm not sure if I could figure out how to track my basis and how much money I put in. So we've put in the bill, and that was a good point. So we put in the bill a hold harmless provision, which basically said you will get a 15% deduction for the money you put in if you can't track your basis. But if the basis was higher, what you've put into the bill, into your pension plan, if you can track that, it would be most beneficial for most people to deduct what they've already paid in. So you're not going to get double taxed on that. And under our bill, we don't tax Social Security. And one of the reasons that we put that in there was because of a provision in the Pennsylvania Constitution that's called the Uniformity Clause.
That's right.
Tell me about the Uniformity Clause, Jim, and why this is a big issue. Because someone said to me one time, why did you design it this way? And I said, well, unlike other people, be it the court system, whatever, I do believe in following the Constitution.
Well, you took an oath of office to uphold that Constitution.
That's right.
I look at this, the Uniformity Clause says the taxation has to be uniform in the same class of subjects. And in this case, we're talking about property owners. And I know we hear the arguments. We don't get to decide who the class is. We don't get to decide whether it's seniors, whether it's, you know, babies, or whether it's, we don't get to decide the class. This is a property tax. The property tax is levied on property owners, and we're looking at an elimination and going to a uniform system of taxation.
Right, and so as an example, like on Social Security, I can't exempt the first $25,000 on Social Security because that's violating uniformity clause.
Exactly.
So I have to basically say all Social Security is non-taxable. And then what we did is on the retirement income, we said all Social Security is not taxable, but then the tax is at 4.92% on the retirement, excluding what you put in because of that uniformity clause. You know, for those who don't know, Jim and I tried to eliminate the first $25,000 in retirement. Can't do it. We tried to have a cutoff, said anybody over age 70 or 75 didn't have to pay it. We can't do it. It's not constitutional. Jim, one of the other comments I get all the time, and I think it's something that we really need to look at, and it can be painful to look at, is people are but one life event away from losing a home. What are some of those events that could happen for both young and old that could cause someone to lose the home?
Well, let's just look back to 2007, 2008, when we had the housing bubble burst. We went into a recession. Nobody's assessed value went down after that. Your assessed value stayed the same, and your property taxes went up while we were still in a recession. We have another recession like that, you could lose a home, and you have no control over that.
If you get laid off.
If you get laid off.
That's a life event.
Sure, and if there's going to be a recession, your chances of getting laid off are better. You could have an injury, you know, you're cleaning the gutter out of your rain spout and you fall and break a leg. Now you can't go to work, and you're off work for a while. And this is all because this concept of we're taxing the thing, the house, but we're not. We're taxing people in these homes. So a death of a spouse, an injury, an illness, a recession, job loss, job relocation. Death
of a spouse.
Yes.
One of the biggest things I hear from seniors a lot, and since I'm a senior, it's kind of near and dear to my heart because I know in my own planning with my wife and I say, you know, if I pass away first, it's important to me to be able to take care of it. For a lot of people, that's not an option. You know, because I mean, I came from a very poor family, but I was very frugal. And so this one life event away from losing a home is a big deal. And I think you just said something that I hope people really hear loud and clear. In the middle of a recession, when everybody's income is going down a little bit, or in some cases a lot, at the same time, the unfunded pension liability because of the recession went way up. So your school property taxes are going up. So this has put people between a proverbial rock and a hard place. You know, Jim, one of the other comments that you and I have heard across the board is that when someone has a piece of property and they've done all the right things their entire life, and they've been frugal, they've been careful, and now it feels like they've been punished again. And what came out to me loud and clear in this is that people wanted either total elimination or nothing because they don't trust government. And I think a lot of it goes back to the casino issue. Tell me what your experience has been with that.
Well, I mean, we can go there. We can look at the casino revenue. We can look at what Act 1 was supposed to do. We can look at Act 581. I mean, there have been countless things that have been done. And in the end, what we see is the promise of relief disappears. You see a temporary relief for a very short period of time, and then your property taxes are right back to where they were or more. And one of my biggest fears at looking at even a homestead-only exemption is the property tax is still in place. And as long as the property tax is still in place, it can come back. And we can kid ourselves and pretend, no, you know, this bill stops that. As long as it's still there, it can come back. And unless we completely eliminate, but the biggest thing is that without complete elimination, our home is still a commodity. It's a taxable commodity. And it's
collateral.
It's collateral. And it's not really the home that's being taxed. Nobody pays their property tax with revenue they've generated from their house. You pay the property tax with revenue that you've received through your income.
You know, which brings up another issue is that one of the things that I found in our research is that we are all, as property owners or residents of Pennsylvania, because of the joint and several liability of this cost-sharing program with the school districts on PESERS, the Public School Employee Retirement System, and they're legitimate liabilities. They are real. Under the Pennsylvania Constitution, you just can't walk away from those obligations. And in my practice, as a CPA, my goal was to make sure that those obligations got paid. So in my mind, what's happened is that we all inadvertently have a potential responsibility and liability for all the other school districts. Now, I don't think, and because I want to be, it's, this integrity aspect and this idea of being logical and rational and realistic is really important. Credibility is at stake. I don't see that happening in Pennsylvania for a long time. I think we've got 12 years before it happens. But it's happening in Illinois right now. And what will happen is that when Illinois school district, as the Chicago school district, becomes unable to pay its bills, the rest of the community, Illinois, will pick up the tab. Unfortunately, Chicago is a major part of Illinois.
Right.
And we should be learning that lesson from it. My fear is by the time we realize it, it'll be way too late. Jim, one of the other comments that I've heard frequently people say is that with the property tax, that as a senior, and this is one it's hard to talk about, but I think we have to really sit down and talk. So as a senior, I've paid taxes all my life and I shouldn't have to pay anymore. And we found that there is a cost of taking care of seniors in the Commonwealth. It's about $3.9 billion. How can we deal with that equitably in the Commonwealth?
Well, if we're eliminating the property tax, we're eliminating a tax.
It's $3.4 billion, by the way.
Right. But we're not really eliminating the revenue that we need to fund education. So that has to be paid. Is it really fair for me? I mean, I'll be 65 in very short order. Is it fair for me to make my children and my grandchildren pay for that so I don't have to contribute anything to 100% elimination? And I don't want to sound harsh here because I know this is difficult for seniors, and but I also don't want to push all this onto our working families. How much longer can we sustain this in Pennsylvania if we keep pushing this burden onto the working families? And in this case, pushing that $3 billion onto the working families. How much longer can we sustain this that we keep, I mean, we're losing kids.
We are, and that's the conclusion that you and I came to. The last comment I'll make, and then we can wrap this up because I think it's important that we hit the major points. I've often said to people that if you gave me a clean slate, I would never design a bill the way I've had to design this. And what do I mean by a clean slate? We're all playing with funding formulas, hold harmless agreements, what's excluded on the sales tax base, what's not excluded on the sales tax base, what we include as income, what do we call as earned income tax. So we tried to put provision in this bill to be as palatable to the vast majority of people we can. Some people will pay more under my bill. Me, I will pay more under my bill. And am I happy about it? I'm not. And I would tell this to most people. None of us that are currently in the legislature created the problem that we have. But I can tell you there's a lot of really good people trying to work to get this thing resolved. But if we don't resolve it in 3 to 5 years, we will find ourselves, in my mind, in a situation that with the flight of younger working people, the state will be in such a revenue jam, it will have no other option but to look at tax and retirement income. And I won't be in the legislature at that point. I came in to get some very specific things done. They'll have to look at tax and retirement income, and you'll still have the property tax, and that will be fatal to us. And that brings up that insolvency issue that I looked at, and I believe could happen to us in about 12 years. In my years, ladies and gentlemen, doing workouts and turnarounds of financially troubled companies, one of the hardest things to do is to realize that we have limited options. You didn't create this problem. Jim didn't create it. I didn't create it. But we can either sit here and assess blame or we can try to solve it. The reason we did the ACT and the frequently asked questions is to remove some of the myth and some of the concerns that people have relative to what this Property Tax Elimination Act does. We are all in a situation where this could become critical. And if one of us starts to fail, there's a term that I use in my practice that's called the death spiral. Once segments of an economy start to collapse, such as first aid and emergency responders, we're seeing that happen now. Caring for seniors that are coming out of hospitals after surgery, we are running into a significant shortage of acute care facilities. Ladies and gentlemen, this is only going to get worse. 65% of Pennsylvanians who are seniors live on Social Security only. We can either deal with the deck of cards we've been dealt with, or we can argue about it. And hopefully we can all decide that this Commonwealth is worth saving. On behalf of me and Jim Rodkey, I want to say thank you very much for your time. And Jim, great. Once again, thank you.
Thank you.